Well, you know, the Canadian labour market has seen its share of gloomy job reports. Will that trend actually continue throughout 2012? Here to share his insights is Geoff Bagg. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the staffing firm, the Bagg Group. Geoff, great to have you here.
Good to be here, thanks.
Okay, how dire is the job situation in Canada? I mean, we're starting to see jobs coming back in the United States, but less so in here, I think.
Yeah, you know, I think it depends whether you're taking a short-term or a longer-term view, because there's definitely some bumps along the way. But if you look at the overall trend, we're still at 7.6% unemployment. And if we go back and look way back, say more than 20 years, I mean, that's way better than our average has been, about 8.5%. So it is fairly positive, but it'd be nice to see it go.
So how many jobs have we really created in the last year, for instance?
Good question. In the last year, I know that we're up about 0.7% overall.
Oh, so that's not bad. Yeah. You know, I get the sense though that there's disparity across the country.
For sure.
You know, Albertan, for instance, I was out there and there were signs in the Tim Hortons and all the local spots they needed help.
Definitely. So there's definitely a move towards the west. Alberta, it's a huge growth area. Saskatchewan and also Newfoundland, because their energy sectors are booming, you're not seeing the exodus of people. People are staying and they're getting good jobs there. And then Ontario is recovering from probably the worst recession that it's ever had back in 2008. And so we're starting to see some economic growth here too. Yeah.
Manufacturing has got to be the concern in Ontario.
For sure.
Specifically, I mean, you're looking at something like Caterpillar, where they take the jobs and they move them to, in this case, the United States, where they move them anywhere around the world. Is Ontario competitive enough? Are we going to see jobs growing in the automotive and that kind of a sector?
Well, there are a number of things in the hopper for the automotive sector. I know that Ford and Toyota and others are speaking with the government, and in that particular area, I know that it's important, the relationships and what they can get. So if it's competitive here, they'll be setting up shop or increasing production.
But would they do that against the background of a high Canadian dollar? I mean, the very reason that the Japanese would look at Canada is because their currency is too high.
Definitely. So the high Canadian dollar isn't helping for sure. At the same time, they're going to look and see, you know, what makes the most sense, whether in the U.S. or Canada. So I think Ontario can be competitive, but it's more challenging than it has been when the dollar was lower.
The focus in the United States for jobs has been on education and the inability to adopt the economies to new technologies, those kinds of things. Is that an issue in Canada? Are people trained enough? Do they have enough expertise?
That's a great question. I think in Canada, it comes down to, are people training in the right areas? So are they going out and determining where there's needs as far as the job market goes, but also looking at their own skills and abilities. And if people are training and if their skills are current, clearly there are companies that are hiring right now, but it is more competitive than it has been in the past.
Well, it's interesting because President Obama said that education is a big thing, and really the president, to get elected, and there is an election coming up in the United States, is focusing on jobs growth. I'm getting the sense that there's less importance being put on jobs growth in this country. Is that a correct assumption? Well, from the federal level?
I think at the federal level, the government's made it clear that they've shifted their priorities from the economic stimulus now to debt reduction. So I wouldn't say that there's the same emphasis or the same things being said. And the other thing is too that our governments, both federally and provincially, have huge deficits, and so I think they're trying to get those under control. But if I was searching, I'd probably search in the private sector rather than the public sector at this point.
Could they be doing more to encourage the private sector? Could they, for instance, allow more research or encourage more research and development?
For sure. So Canada has lagged behind in the research and development. We're spending about 1% of GDP, and typically a company or a country would spend about 1.6. So that's a fairly significant gap, and if they offered incentives and rebates, that would definitely help for that.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is the individual Canadian, or is Canada as a whole competitive enough in your point of view?
In my point of view, the Canadian economy is moving ahead and it is competitive, not at the speed that we'd like to see, but it is moving ahead, and so people can't lose sight of that. And then also individuals need to look at themselves as just that, individuals, and not get too hung up on the statistics. When they're out looking for a job, clearly companies are hiring and the competition is tough out there, but People, if they do the right things, they can get a job nowadays.
Yeah. Do they get the wages that they want typically? I mean, you look at the case of Caterpillar.
Does anybody get the wages they want?
Good point. But you look at Caterpillar, they were looking potentially at a 50% pay cut just to keep their jobs, if they did keep their jobs. Didn't work out that way. I mean,
sure.
there are a lot of people that are competing for so many jobs that actually they're not getting the salaries that were there in place?
I think there's definitely been some downward pressure in the marketplace in some areas, but we're placing people, and we haven't seen a lot in the areas that we've been placing in.
Are you mostly focused on executives? Is the corporate suite, if you will, and doing well compared to the average guy, the worker on the line?
Actually, it's funny because we have a number of different lines ourselves, and I'm not thinking of the executive suite as much as just everything from entry level to mid-level management, and even people working in the factories. I own a company that's all they do, and the jobs are there, and the wages seem to be there, but I'm sure people would want more.
Yeah, they just have to learn to be a little bit more patient, Geoff. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Great to see you, Pat.
Geoff Bagg is the Chief Executive Officer of the staffing firm, The Bagg Group. There's their website for you, bagg.com. Coming up on the Roundtable, you said it. We hear what viewers have to say on our top stories of the day. That and more still to come on the Roundtable, so stay with us.